Okay, in this deck profile, we'll be doing a Highlander deck profile for Wonderverse, Yobuko front, and for Atlas. So that's blue, red, and pink. Not in that specific order. But with Highlander deck lists, usually these are the decks that to me is one of the more interesting to build because everything is a singleton. You also have to meet cost, but at the same time you also want to make your cards have synergy with each other in case they do come up, even though some of those chances are very little and few in between because everything is a one-of. So a lot of times your games are not the same between, you could play like maybe 10 matches and maybe all of them will turn out differently. But this deck I wanted to make because this deck is actually made because there are two legends that I really wanted to put together. That are like semi bad for you, but at the same time I just like it because it was funny, because it does hurt you. And those two legends are Oni of Tatari as well as Calabera, the little red bomber. And again with Highlander, it did get a buff with set 3, which lets us actually run 3 legends. So again, you could also change, as you'll notice through the deck that as we go through the deck profile with Calabera, she could easily be replaced with the level 1 legend from Yobuko front from set 3, which is the secret rare, which is Umemi, because it would synergize more with this deck because of the supernatural sub-theme that we have going with this deck. But I like Calabera because, again, her counter is to do 5 damage, but she can also be used for her other ability that when she comes into play, it is a force reveal, but again, we are playing a drive ruler, so it won't actually take up like any of our summoning or anything like that. But you do 2 damage to your opponent as well as 2 damage to yourself. And then again, I just wanted these cards that, you know, like are actually incidents. So like the Oni of Tatari, and then Calabera is also an incident, and then some of the other cards in our deck too is also considered like incidents. So that might be like the deck name for this deck. But again, these are the 3 legends we're using. So Tatari could again be a triple attacker. They're also these both also have force reveal, which is kind of interesting. You know, like only if Tatari is really good statted. It can only attack the center slot, but again, as a triple attacker, it can be fine. And then at worst, you know, we give it to our opponent, which sometimes could end up killing ourselves. And then with Calabera, again, you could kill yourself because you're taking 2 damage as well, but you can also hit your triggers. Because one of the other things too with Highlander is that they also got a counter boost where you can have 20 total CNTs in your deck. And again, and then with Schrodinger, it's like you have a 21st counter. Also to note, because of Oni of Tatari being a -5, you are essentially playing Schrodinger and Calabera in your deck for free. So it doesn't count towards our 50 CNT count. So these are the 3 main legends that I wanted to base the deck off of. But again, there is the couple first few cards won't be any relevant, but the deck does have a supernatural sub-theme to it. So we're going to be doing it in parts. So rather than doing it, because there are 50 individual cards, we're not going to go over each individual one, but we'll go them over in like batches. So the first batch we have is the 3 level 4 superiors that we are running. We're actually not running any from Yobuko front or the red side. But with Mistwyrm, Clock Tower Dragon is very powerful because it allows us to attack multiple times, you know, with either a ruler or another unit that may have like 3 strike. So that's why he's in here, as well as he gives our ruler breakthrough. So again, you could use your ruler for that. Efreet, again, when you hit it off the CNT, you can deal your opponent damage, or when we play it for overdrive, you can deal your opponent 2. This one actually has a relevance for later on because it is a supernatural, and there's one card that does synergize with it because it is level 4, so it may not synergize with the majority of our sub-theme, but it is something to note that is possible that we'll go over in a bit. And last we have Ed. So Ed has 2 targets, so again, he normally just does 5 damage to any unit if you counter or if you play him. But he also can play a Wonderverse event in your graveyard for free, and then you have to remove it. But we can play Schrodinger as well as Zap 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 from the first set. And then again, we'll get to those when we get to some of the events. For the next one we have is, so these four is, we actually are running the Sakuya from red, but it is grouped with Huli. So for this reason, we're going over this group. Huli, the Spider Lily, is a Genesis summon ability that, and if your opponent kills it, you get to have them, if it's put into the graveyard by your opponent's, by your opponent itself, you get to choose one card, or they choose one card in their hand or one card that they have in play, and then they put it into the graveyard. So if they try to get rid of it, it does have the ability to, make them at least lose something. But Huli is one of the more interesting Genesis summoning, because this one Genesis summons with another supernatural or a mage, and then she can get any deity, dragon, or demon lord. And it actually doesn't matter the cost, but it only counts for Yomaj in front and Volnar, so that's yellow and red. But because we're not running any yellow in our deck, we are only getting from the red section, since we're not using any of the demon lords from the blue side. But with this one, again, Huli can go into, these are the main three targets that we can go into for it. So like you have Sakuya-hime, that again can be used to look at top two and then dig for more cards as well to play. And then we have, so we'll do the dragon first. So these two are both supernatural. So that's somewhat important. Again, like efreet being a supernatural. But they're less likely to be in the graveyard, whereas like efreet will always be in the graveyard because it is a counter. So it can't get stuck in damage. But with the dragon, it's just very good. It's 6/6/2, so again, it gets around cards like Lucifer, but again, can be used to destroy sets when it attacks, or even rest opponent's energy, preventing them from doing, stuff on your turn. Or if you're playing against like a knight deck, you can rest their third energy, so that way they only have 2 energy on their next turn. And then we have Shinno. This one is using the supernatural theme for the 100 yokai mark, so it counts as level 0 for that ability on the cards that we are running in this deck. It can't be placed in defense zone, and because we are using a supernatural theme, you can use his DR ability sometimes to save him, as well as you can even use his ability to deal 1 damage by removing supernatural. So he's better as the game goes on late, if you do get him, because then you can use it to kind of clear your opponent's field or get rid of pesky units that you don't want to waste time attacking when you want to just be getting in at your opponent. Next we have one Joe of the Kamaitachi in New York. So there's another supernatural, but this one is when you overdrive it, you can use it to destroy a unit in the defense zone. It also has 5 power, so it's just very good for clearing. But this one doesn't synergize as much with our supernatural theme, other than just being a supernatural itself. So next we have the 3 cards that have the ability 100 Yokai March. They also hit different things or different levels. So like with Oxoni and Amabi, both of these can hit level 1 or less. Whereas Hyakume can only hit level 0s. And then the reason why this is very important, they don't hit 0s, is that it actually cannot hit Oni of Tatari. Oni of Tatari is also supernatural that you can hit with 100 Yokai March for both Amabi and Ox Oni, but you cannot do it with Hyakume, because Hyakume specifically says level 0s. It doesn't say level 0 or less. In this game, there are some cards that do say level 0 or less, because they do take into account some cards that have a negative cost. But for this one, Hyakume can only hit the other ones that count as level 0s in her deck. But then with these two, again, they can hit only of Tatari. And then one thing to note too, it may not be as relevant, but there is the gateruler.eu database, as well as deck builder website. I'll probably put a link in the description as well, that I use to sometimes I use it to double check my CNT count, my cost, because sometimes, especially with Highlander, it's very hard to keep track. But then one thing to note is that on that site, for some reason, Amabi, it does not register as a CNT, but it is a CNT. So it's just something to note of. If you use the deck build, it'll say you have 19 counters, but you actually have the 20 because of Amabi. So just something to be aware of if they have not fixed that yet. The next batch we have is a bunch of the level 1s. So even though Ox only tenkai, this one is a level 2. It does count as a level 0 400 yokai march. It also has 3 strikes, so again at worst it is a 3 strike unit. We have Mikage, so again these are all supernatural level 1s. Its CNT ability is we can destroy a card in the defense zone. Nyudou, this lets us actually rest our opponent's ruler if they hit it off of damage, and if anything you can also use it for if it's in play. It gives all your units +1 attack. You also have Xiannu of the Three Sisters. So this one, you can destroy one of your opponent's set cards if you counter it. If not, you can also have it where your opponent cannot special summon, as well as you get to like rest one of their energies. So again, prevents like cards like Overlord from, or Wizard from doing things on your turn using energy. But it also stops like cards like Genesis summoning from special summoning things. We're also running Granny Tachyon, because again, this one can be used to like move out of an attack to a defense zone if you want to use it to protect yourself, or you can like move it out if you want to save it as well. Karasu is also mostly just a defense ability, because again when you're attacked you can play it from your set zone and then use it as a defense. And then we also have Mizukage, so this one gives all of our supernatural defenders, so it means that we can play the cards on the side, and then afterwards they can move into the defense if we want to use them for that. And then for our level 1 is Yobuko from the new set, from set 3. That lets us enhance overall supernatural. So again, that's why the deck has that sub-theme. And then while it has a supernatural, under it has breakthrough, defender, as well as charge shield. So it can be very useful, when you do get it. And then next we have is a bunch of the level 0 supernatural. So again, we'll kind of go through them a little bit quicker. So with Sakuya-hime, so it's a CNT that lets you remove 2 cards in your opponent's graveyard. Again, this can be helpful against cards like, or decks like Darkness or Genesis Summoning, but again, because we're only running 1 copy, it doesn't hurt them as much. We also have one Yobuko. Again, these are all level 0s that are supernatural that we can hit with Yokai March, as well as be targets for Shinno to remove to deal damage. And then we have so like Doji, Neptunia, Yukiona, Joe, and then Space Dualahan. These are just basic generic supernaturals, with 5 or 4 HP, and then varying HP, but then they all have like 4 or 5 attack, so just good clearers. And then you have Yukinko, and then you have Mutilated Goblin. So these are both again supernatural, but we're using them because they have 2 strike as a level 0. And then we also have these are like considered like to me the defensive supernatural. So like Banshee has 4 HP, but can have 2 attack if you need it. Forest Fairy 5 HP but prevents breakthrough. Nurikabe can get rid of defenders. So if your opponent uses cards like Aris and then they don't get rid of this, Aris won't end up going into the defense, or any of their defenders will not go to the defense zone, and it leaves you free to attack. So something they have to like play around. As well as if you do overdrive it, you could potentially flip something face down. Again, this might target like Aris, where you put their warrior face down, or something specifically that the deck might damage flip over. And then Space Yude, again, is more defense because of the 5 HP. But again, you do hurt yourself, but then you get to heal out later. So the point is that you want to try to hit a CNT off of her, and which is pretty high considering you are running 20 CNTs in this deck. So those are the level 0s. These next 2 cards, the level 0s for the supernatural side. Then we also have Black Cat Sith and then Tatarija. So again, these are mostly just the cost reducers to help us play bigger cards. And again, because everything is a 1 of, it's not that much of a, doesn't hurt as much. And then we have generic Future Folk. So Space Crystal lets us search for our sets that we can play in our deck. That we'll be going over in a bit. And then we also have Arcane Innovator, which again is just a really good card to shuffle back in our counters. Next we have the 2 events that we can target with Ed, which is Schrodinger's Cat, which lets us play a card from our damage zone. Which acts as like a pseudo heal, but it does not trigger any of the overdrive or touchdown abilities. And then we have Zap Zap Zap, which is still pretty good, dealing 6 damage. It deals with a majority of units as well. And then for some of our other level 3 events, we have one Embrace of Aeons, because again, this is just a very good card for clearing things, like especially cards that have like Charge Shield, because then you negate their ability. So you have that. You also have Rite of Soul's Purification. So this is mostly for its CNT ability, where if you hit it, it rests, all of your opponent's rulers and units. So if this is like the first damage that they take, essentially it shuts out the rest of their turn. It can also be used to destroy all field or all sets when you do play it. So for like some decks that utilize field zones, this could actually get rid of them if you do hit it. Sorry, got cut off. Next we have one Rite of Ophidian Reincarnation. So this is one of the cards that deals with the supernatural. So this is like where efreet, the dragon, as well as Shinno can come in play. So this card I've actually been pretty impressed with every time I hit it, because again, most of our deck is supernatural. But what it does is you play this card when you CNT it, or you can also play it as a standard action, where you put the top, essentially you mill the top card of your deck, and then you get to special summon one supernatural from your graveyard to your field. And again, it doesn't care what level that unit is. And then afterwards, you can put one allied unit, so it doesn't have to be the one that you chose, into the graveyard. And then when you do that, your opponent has to choose one of the cards in play and then put it into the graveyard as well. So essentially, you could have, say like Efreet, Shinno, or the dragon in your graveyard. You could mill a card, special summon them, and if you already have another supernatural out on the field, you could send that card and then make your opponent get rid of one of their cards in the field, where you trade like a lesser card, but you also get to revive one of your bigger supernatural cards. The only problem is that it does not trigger any abilities of the supernatural that you special summon, because all of them are either touchdown or overdrive skills. But I've been very impressed with this card every time I do hit it. Next we have 1000 Sakura, so this is just very good for digging through our deck for what we want to hit. We're also running one Wild Fury. Again, just deals 5 damage when you CNT it, or 3 damage. These are also all cards that mostly can be played at instant speed, so again, they could be set with like Krystal. And then we have one Spider's Thread. This card I could easily see being replaced with G&G Armament, because we do have quite a few cards that do damage to units, such as like Ed, you have like Wild Fury, you have even Shinno dealing 2 damage increments to units would be a lot better than just the 1 damage. Because this card, to me, it also is a supernatural. That's the one benefit to it being, in the deck. But as a CNT, it's not bad to rest, but I don't actually care for its ability, because usually you have to use this during your opponent's attack phase, where if you do it during their main phase, they can actually just kind of like get out of it for that unit that you're resting, because it only rests units if you use it for its actual ability. So this is the only card that I would consider you could replace with like G&G Armament, which lets all your damage to units be up by 1. And the last 4 events we have are just events that are good for defense, like Rite of Kami Scorn lets you turn an attack essentially to you to 0, or to like a unit if you want to save it. Space Cave, again, very good for resting a unit when you hit it for counter, or if not, reducing damage by 2. Hashtag GNG can be used to prevent a 3 damage attack, so that way the worst case scenario is you taking 1 less damage, so that way it doesn't feel like you lost full value. And then lastly is Shields Up, which is just a very good card to prevent any one direct attack. But with that, that's the end of this video for the Highlander Supernatural sub-theme deck. Again, it's mostly just incidents, because I wanted to revolve it around Oni of Tatsuri as well as Calabera. But again, the deck list for this will be in the description below. I hope it does fit, because I haven't typed the deck list out yet, and I don't know how many words I can put for YouTube's description, but hopefully I can place all 50 cards into the list. So if not, I will shorten them so that way they're kind of memorable, or so that way it'll be kind of easy to see them. So like the first part of the name, if they have like extra words on it, so that way it'll cut down on the number count. But with that, if you have any questions or comments, you can always put them in the comment section. And then if there are other, again, deck types that you want to see, you can always mention in the comment, and then I will do my best to try to see if I can make decks around those. But with that, thank you for watching, and then I will see you guys in the next one.